What if a single decision by a leader could change the course of international relations? When United States President Donald Trump announced the suspension of a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, it seemed like a temporary relief. But beneath the surface, tensions began to brew, threatening both countries' economies. Would this unexpected twist in trade policy set the stage for a geopolitical showdown? And what role did Canada have in this unfolding drama? The recent developments have sparked fierce competition, not just between the US and Canada, but also involving powerful nations like China. After the completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion in May, Canada's oil began flowing towards the Pacific, but now the stakes have risen. Tankers filled with oil sands passed under Vancouver's iconic Lion Gate Bridge, heading to refineries. This shift is monumental as Canada, long reliant on US exports, now looks towards Asia, and China has been eyeing Canada's rich resources, particularly oil. Amid this tumultuous backdrop, the Canadian government recognized the dangers of dependency on its unpredictable neighbor. Trump's tariff threat stoked fears, motivating Canada to strengthen its ties with Asia. Surprisingly, instead of leaning towards China, Canada made a bold choice, favoring Japan as an energy partner. But what led to this significant pivot? As Alberta's Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, emphasized during her talks in Tokyo, Canadian liquefied natural gas, LNG, presented a critical opportunity for Japan's energy security. While the tension with the US looms, Alberta has geographical advantages, making exports to Japan a compelling alternative to traditional routes through the Gulf Coast. A rapidly changing landscape shows Canada is ready to take charge, preparing to launch its inaugural LNG exports to Japan this very year. Yet, what does this mean for the future of US-Canadian relations and the global market? As Japan eagerly anticipates this new energy source, the Chinese regime feels the sting of being sidelined. With Canada now focused on Japan, China's hopes of securing oil supplies suffer a significant blow. The unexpected twist, Canada welcoming Japan into its resource-sharing portfolio, sends ripples through international diplomacy. Will this new alliance create deeper cracks between the US and its neighbors, or will it foster a renewed sense of cooperation? The complexity of global energy dynamics comes at a pivotal moment. The US, traditionally a strong partner for Canada, now faces potential losses in oil, gas, and electricity supplies. The looming threat of tariffs may push Canada to refine its strategies and cooperate with nations that could one day rival US interests. How will this affect energy availability in the US and rates for consumers? As provinces like Alberta scramble to increase their export capacity, will they be able to navigate the geopolitical waters without capsizing their economy? The time for decisive action is now. Both nations must consider the critical need for collaboration. As the stakes rise higher and tensions simmer, the unfolding story of energy diplomacy between Canada, the US, and their Asian partners could redefine alliances for years to come. Could this be just the beginning of a major shakeup in the global energy market? The real impact remains to be seen. In a surprising twist, Alberta, Canada, is ramping up its efforts to export liquefied natural gas to Japan, signaling a significant shift in international energy trade. Just days after establishing a partnership with Japan, the Chinese government found itself at a disadvantage, as Canada's new customer base excludes them. This unexpected maneuver is set to send shockwaves through Beijing, which relies heavily on stable oil and gas supplies. The agreements between Canada and Japan emerged swiftly, raising eyebrows, particularly given their timing just after discussions with China. Yuya Hasegawa, director of Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, expressed enthusiasm about receiving these resources, noting that Canadian LNG comes with a 0% tariff, a game-changer for Japan. The implications are profound. Not only does this fresh alliance between Canada and Japan promise to reshape energy dynamics, but it threatens to unravel America's position in the market. As Alberta forges ahead, preparing 4 or 5 major energy export projects, concerns loom over the potential fallout for the United States. The American government has long relied on Canadian exports to maintain lower consumer costs and to solidify its energy reserves. Should Canada seal its energy commitments with Japan, the US could face severe repercussions. In this high-stakes environment, President Trump is reportedly planning a meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru to discuss a substantial $44 billion LNG export project in Alaska. However, Canada's rapid pivot could render that initiative moot before it even begins. What will these losses mean for American consumers and the global energy landscape? Canada appears determined to carve its niche in the energy sector, but what consequences await those caught unprepared? As Canada's leadership bars its path toward independence from a historically unpredictable neighbor, the lines of allegiance in the energy sector are redrawn. The U.S. might find itself grappling with the reality that an alternative partnership with Japan bears considerable benefits for both parties. What happens next as tensions rise and allegiances shift? The stage is set for a dramatic clash over energy resources, with the world watching closely. Can the United States regain control, or will it falter under pressure? The stakes have never been higher, and the outcome could redefine the energy landscape forever. As tensions simmer between the United States and Canada over trade tariffs, a silent battle brews beneath the surface. Picture this: the hum of machinery in data centers, the flickering lights of monitors, and the ever-growing demand for energy intensifying by the day. American energy reserves may be abundant, yet the insatiable appetite for power from AI-driven technology threatens to strain capacity. Is there a looming crisis in the air? Canada's robust energy production stands as a steady lifeline, ready to support the U.S. through interconnected pipelines and grids. This alliance could ensure that exporters maintain affordable prices for consumers across the border. However, uncertainty has loomed ever since trade discussions began to sour. If diplomatic relations continue to falter, Canada's vital oil exports, accounting for 24% of U.S. crude oil imports, could be at risk. Can you hear the rumble of uncertainty as heavy crude travel down cross-border pipelines to U.S. refineries? These facilities, reliant on Canadian oil, may suddenly find themselves facing geopolitical perils. What happens if the flow of oil is obstructed? Would they turn to unstable suppliers, ultimately increasing costs for everyone? In a surprising twist, the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline has drastically increased Canada's ability to ship oil and support allies such as South Korea and Japan. As these nations draw closer together, the recent tariff dispute could solidify Canada's position in Asia against its neighbor. Electricity is yet another crucial area where the U.S. risks losing ground. While they generate much of their own power, Canadian energy sources illuminate homes and businesses nationwide. Notably, new projects, like Hydro-Quebec's line to New York City, aim to cover 20% of its energy needs, potentially saving residents billions. Will this push energize exports or shed light on a new financial frailty? With over 30 cross-border lines connecting Canadian provinces to American states, Canada is crucial for maintaining grid security. Yet, as data centers consume increasing energy, they could account for a staggering 12% of total U.S. electricity consumption by 2028. Could a looming tariff dispute derail the United States' energy plans, or will Canada find alternative avenues despite the impending challenges? The clock is ticking, and the future of both nations may hang in the balance. Tensions are rising, and the stakes couldn't be higher. In a stunning turn of events, Canada has decided to pivot away from China for its energy exports, aligning instead with Japan. This unexpected move comes amid tariff threats looming over the Canadian economy from the United States. What caused Canada to make this bold choice? Recently, President Donald Trump suspended hefty tariffs on Canadian imports, but this temporary relief did little to ease rising tensions between the two nations. While some sought to exploit this rift, the landscape of North American trade shifted dramatically as Canada turned its gaze toward Japan, particularly for liquefied natural gas shipments. With the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, Canada's oil exports were about to enter a new era. But was the real reason behind Canada's shift the threat of U.S. tariffs? Alberta's Minister of Environment, Rebecca Schultz, has been making waves in Tokyo, championing the benefits of Canadian LNG. Canada is positioned to enhance Japan's energy security as it transitions away from coal, a tantalizing prospect for both nations, creating a bond that could overshadow past partnerships. Can you imagine what the Canadian landscape looks like as railways and ports are reconfigured to facilitate this new direction? On the flip side, China missed its chance to retrieve this vital energy resource. With the Beijing regime eyeing Canada's riches, this misstep is hitting hard. Adding to the drama, Canada's agreements with Japan arrived just one day after talks with Chinese officials. The implications are profound. What does this mean for international relations moving forward? In response to the unexpected pivot, the United States could potentially face losses across various sectors, especially if reliance on Canada's energy supplies dwindles. Canada's exports of oil, gas, and electricity have long played essential roles in stabilizing the U.S. market. Imagine a future where those supplies are compromised. But it doesn't end there. Would Canada really escape the effects of these looming tariffs? While Trudeau's government appears resolute, there are ominous clouds ahead. Internal pressures are building as new political commitments emerge. The NDP is gearing up to impose tariffs on American electric vehicles should Trump follow through on his threats. How will this power struggle affect the energy landscape, and who will ultimately emerge victorious in this high-stakes game? As Alberta edges closer to a major energy deal with Japan, the question looms ever larger: will the political chess match between Canada, the United States, and China lead to a newfound stability or unravel the very fabric of their existing partnerships? With all eyes on future energy negotiations, the timer is ticking. Tension brewed between Canada and the United States over tariffs, creating ripples in the global energy market. As China watches closely, eager to capitalize on any weakness, the stakes rise. Will the emerging energy deal between Canada and Japan shift the balance of power away from the U.S.? Amidst uncertainty, Alberta's energy sector seeks new horizons. With changing trade dynamics and tariff threats looming, Canadian officials are racing to explore export opportunities in Japan. Recent meetings held by Alberta's Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz hint at a strategic pivot towards Japan as Canada aims to bolster its economic independence from the U.S. Why would Canada favor Japan over China? The answer lies in a combination of geographical advantages and energy security. As Japan shifts away from coal, reliable liquefied natural gas, LNG, from Canada offers a sustainable alternative. This not only lowers emissions but also strengthens the ties between the two countries, promising a secure energy future. However, the energy landscape is fraught with geopolitical risks. The recent expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline has tripled Canada's shipping capacity, allowing it to support allies in Asia. With Canadian oil increasingly vital for Japan's energy needs, the U.S. risks losing a crucial trading partner, and it may not realize the full extent until it's too late. As the U.S. scrambles to secure its energy requirements, the impact of losing Canadian crude could be profound. Not only does Canada supply 24% of total U.S. oil consumption, but the interconnectedness between their energy infrastructures creates a delicate balance, potentially exposing the U.S. to high costs and geopolitical vulnerabilities if that supply is disrupted. What's more, the looming tariff spat threatens to unravel these tightly woven ties. Canadian electricity exports keep the lights on in several U.S. states, and projected growth in energy demands could spell disaster for the U.S. if it loses that support. With future energy consumption expected to soar 12% of total U.S. consumption by 2028, it's a race against time. Still, Canada remains optimistic. Emphasizing new relationships, especially in Asia, the Canadian government believes that it can navigate this turmoil more successfully than its southern neighbor. But can it truly stand alone? The implications run deep. As the economic landscape changes, so do the stakes for both nations. Canada is poised to succeed with or without U.S. support, but the question remains, is the U.S. ready to cooperate? Alberta's initiatives to revitalize its infrastructure signal its readiness, embracing the challenges of the future while seeking stability in a volatile market. However, looming over this partnership is the threat of emerging political players like China, eager to exploit division. Will the newfound bond between Canada and Japan withstand the pressures of a shifting geopolitical environment? In a shocking twist, Canada has woven a deal with Japan just as conversations with China falter. This rapid pivot could leave China reeling, wondering what they failed to grasp. How will this newfound alliance affect global dynamics? The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the energy arena is about to get very interesting. Will Canada successfully harness its resources to redefine international relations? Or will unforeseen challenges put their ambitions at risk? Only time will tell. In a surprising turn of events, Canada has chosen to pivot away from its long-standing energy relationship with China, opting instead to strengthen ties with Japan. This strategic shift comes amidst rising tensions with the United States, especially following President Donald Trump's decision to impose tariffs on Canadian goods. As China's hopes for Canadian resources dimmed, Japan eagerly anticipated its newfound energy partnership, setting the stage for an economic game-changer. Alberta, Canada's oil-rich province, faces uncertain times, prompted by U.S. tariff threats. Seeking alternative export routes, Alberta's Environment Minister, Rebecca Schultz, has been actively engaging with trade representatives in Tokyo. At these meetings, Schultz outlined how crucial Canadian liquefied natural gas, LNG, is for Japan's energy security. The transition away from coal in Japan amplifies the value of reliable LNG from Canada, promising not only to lower emissions but also to fortify economic relations between the two nations. As Canada prepares to launch its inaugural LNG export project to Japan this year, officials attribute this bold move to the instability introduced by U.S. tariffs. Schultz pointed out that Alberta's route to Japan offers geographic advantages, presenting a shorter pathway for energy exports than the Gulf Coast routes of the United States. This strategic decision is further enhanced by the perception that Alberta poses less geopolitical risk than its unpredictable neighbor. Meanwhile, excitement in Japan is palpable. Yuya Hasegawa, the director of the Energy Resources Development Division, expressed optimism about receiving Canadian LNG. The missed opportunity for China echoes loudly in Beijing, as Canada's pivot not only shocks the regime but could also reshape regional energy supply dynamics. So, as Canada embraces Japan, will the United States face new losses in its energy game? As Alberta accelerates its plans, it finds itself poised at a crossroads while Trump contemplates a meeting with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru to discuss a mammoth LNG project in Alaska. Could it already be too late for such discussions? With Canada seemingly committed to its new direction, the implications for U.S.-Canada relations could be profound, especially given that Canadian exports keep U.S. energy costs low and bolster reserves. As we delve deeper into this shifting landscape, one question remains: how will the United States respond to Canada's strategic gamble? The energy tension between these North American neighbors could redefine their futures in the international energy market. With Alberta claiming it will endure less from U.S. tariffs, has it truly found a way to sidestep the storm? The unfolding situation promises riveting developments to consider. In the face of new global realities, Canada is working diligently to find its footing amidst U.S. unpredictability. Its energy partnerships are evolving, with the prospect of additional export capacity on the horizon. Yet, will the regulatory environment and market stability attract the necessary investments? As both countries navigate emerging challenges and opportunities, the stakes have never been higher.